Good afternoon, LaKitia Woodard. It is great to have you here today. Self-awareness coach for high-achieving women. I'd love to dig right in if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for
Good.
having me.
I gotta know, what has been your biggest obstacle in your life? And how in the world did you ever get over it?
That's a good question. The biggest obstacle in my life is surviving sexual abuse. I was sexually abused at 8 years old by my mother's husband, and the abuse lasted for 8 years. And it was a family secret. So my mom and other family members knew about it. So that was the biggest hurdle that I needed to get over, obviously. And the biggest thing that helped me out was therapy. Therapy helped me to really start my healing journey, and therapy also helped me to really tap into who I am by discovering who I am. Because when you experience something as traumatic as sexual abuse, really anything traumatic, right? It tends to pull you from who you really are. That trauma tends to prevent you from really growing into the person that you are meant to be. And so my therapy really helped me to start my self-discovery journey, which is how I ended up becoming a self-awareness coach, because I realized that I needed to figure out who I was in order to know what it is I'm supposed to do in this world and how I am to help others.
I thought was interesting, one of the things I was reading about you is that you didn't want to be known as the sexual abuse victim. And I think that is so important for the women who are listening. We are not a prisoner of our past. It may hold many, many tragedies, no question about it. I'm not discounting it, but we're not a prisoner. And you are a good example of that, because I had read about you and you said, you didn't want to be known as that person. Yes, you gave it away and people were inspired. And there is nothing, that is a big deal right there. However, you are more than what happened to you. And that's what I was getting from what I've been reading about you. And
Yeah, absolutely right.
when did you decide you were more than what happened to you? I mean, what pushed you into getting even the help, or even admitting that you needed help, even knowing there was something wrong?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that might, go on, please.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, it might sound like a dumb question to a lot of people, like, duh. But, if you've grown up with something that is, I know that something I've grown up with is normal to me. You might tell me, LaKitia, might say, Julie, that is really strange. And I didn't know that because I grew up with it. And that's why I asked that question, because I think people will think, what? Please.
Yeah, no, it's not a crazy question. It's a really good question, because you're right. When you have experienced something, that's all you tend to think that that's normal. But I will say the one thing is that it never felt right. Anything that's good for you, it's not going to make you feel less than. It's not going to make you want to disappear and hide yourself. It's not going to make you doubt yourself. It's not going to make you doubt that other people love you. So that's how I knew that something was wrong, right? And this wasn't normal. This is not supposed to be happening. And so I fought against it the best that I could. Because what can you do when you're 8 years old? Between 8 and 16, what can you do when the person is living right in your home, right? But to be honest with you, Jody, someone had to offer therapy to me. It wasn't something that I sought out. Therapy is not something that was talked about in my home. It's not really something that's talked about in my community, if we're going to be completely honest. And so that was probably a good thing when it comes, to my situation. And the reason why I say that is that I didn't have this preconceived notion that therapy was something that was bad. Right. And that therapy was something that only crazy people encounter or. And so when it was offered to me, even though I had this nonchalant attitude, like, well, okay, whatever, because the person offered to pay for it because somebody else saw something in me. I took a chance. And that's something that's hard to do when you have experienced any type of trauma, not just sexual abuse, but any type of trauma. It's hard to put your trust into someone else when trust has been broken, in general. And so I really had to be vulnerable. I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time. I really just needed to be vulnerable, and accept that person, who offered the therapy for me. And that was like the best decision I really could have made. because the therapy helped me out so much. And it was through therapy that I really was told that it wasn't my fault, because that's something too. Because when we, experience a traumatic experience, we tend to think that it's our fault. So I was told that it wasn't my fault. I was told that, people failed me. People failed me, and so I did what I can do, and I couldn't blame myself anymore. So it wasn't necessarily that I just got courage one day and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to therapy and I'm gonna heal from this. It was, no, somebody saw something in me that I did not see in myself, and decided to pour into me, and thank God that she did, because now I'm here today.
And what a thing, because I think a lot of women listening, they're stuck in one form or another. And when they hear that, maybe a friend of yours might say, hey, why don't you check out such and such? And at first you might think, what are you doing offering me therapy? What's your problem? And at the same time, maybe they're seeing in something in you that you don't see in yourself. And it's not necessarily insulting, saving your life. I mean, or you could check it out and say, maybe it wouldn't have worked for you. And yet look at look at how you've been able to blossom and step into your own, which is, that is an incredible obstacle. And one of the things that I compliment you on is that you're able to have a normal life, because that is just such a betrayal at such a level. I mean, I have children, and that would be just such a deception that there's not even words for. I mean, I'm trying to have words. It's hard for me to find words.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And and to your point, normal life, right? This is the reason why I share my story. This is the reason why I'm transparent about it. Because Jody, you'll be surprised. I'm a speaker as well. You'll be surprised how many women will come up to me after I've come up off the stage and say, thank you so much for sharing your story, with tears in their eyes, because they had to have experienced it, but never, went and got help for it, never has said anything to anybody else. So to see someone who has gone through what they've gone through, overcame it, and able to exude confidence and strength, it gives someone else hope, right? Because when sexual trauma in general just have this negative stigma, for whatever reason, society tends to blame the victim, and victim shaming occurs, and then you have victims turning inwards, and then they start to make decisions that's probably not the best, and it's because it's all because of the trauma, right? It's a negative effect of this trauma that goes unresolved. So me sharing my story is my way of showing others that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You can have a normal life. You can love someone else, right? You can have other people love you. You can give and receive at the same rate that you actually give. Like, it's actually possible. But how would someone know if we're not sharing our story?
Well, that's well said. I'm sorry, please go on.
No, I was going to say, how would someone know?
Well said. And I was a volunteer for a women's shelter, and dealt with sexual abuse. And I used to help with the weekends when the social workers wanted to take breaks, basically. So go to where there's a sexual abuse person in the hospital before the sane nurse comes, etc. One of the things I found was that, I don't care if a woman was half naked walking down the street. She didn't invite it. She doesn't have a sign saying, please do this to me. It doesn't matter. It's not right. And that was one thing that I was surprised, actually, at some of the attitude.
Yeah.
And not,
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Some people it's like that. I started speaking about it really young. 18 actually. I started when I was in college. I was at school and I saw an article in the campus paper that was asking for volunteers. It was a small nonprofit called Youth for Survivors, and so it was a group of us college students that was going around talking to students at different high schools, elementary schools, churches, different organizations like that, and just talking about different different at-risk behavior. So I talked about, surviving sexual abuse. And this was, I started speaking before the therapy started. And you'll be surprised. I never forget, we had a speaking engagement in front of adults. And so I was telling my story and just, educating the adults on what to look for, right? If your child is being sexually abused, how can you approach it? Things of that nature. And you'll be surprised how, they question me. Well, why you didn't do more? Why you didn't fight? Why you didn't do this? Why? And I had to, bring it back. And I'm just like, wait a minute. I'm an 8-year-old child. This happened when I was 8 years old. Can you imagine how small an 8-year-old child is? My mother's husband is, at the time was 6 feet, over 200 pounds. What is an 8-year-old to do against a grown man who's 6 feet, 200 pounds? We need to stop blaming the victim, period.
LaKitia,
but to do that.
Well, I was 21 when I was physically abused, okay? I mean, sexually abused. And talk about knowing better? No, because I didn't realize that sexual abuse didn't mean that I thought sexual abuse was you're thrown in a closet and it's so obvious, kind of like in those TV shows where it's really, just, you don't have any control. And I was 21. So I can tell you from my experience that I didn't understand it. I didn't know that it doesn't mean you're thrown into a closet and you're, stripped like whatever. It can be very, it's somebody in a vulnerable position being taken advantage of. And I didn't realize it. And I blame myself for many, many years, too many years, because then the law of whatever ran out. So I could not, and it was a therapist. So.
Therapist that helped you out. And you know what, I'm glad you bring that up, because that's a really good point, because when it comes to sexual assault, 9 times out of 10 is usually somebody that especially with sexual abuse of a child, is usually somebody that child knows. It's a mom, a dad, somebody within the family. So it's not necessarily this boogeyman from across the street. Not to say that it cannot be. It could totally be a perfect stranger, but most times it's not. It's somebody that person knows. And so when it happens, you are confused. You're confused on what just happened. Like, it takes time to process trauma, and just because it takes you time to process what happened and realize that something traumatic happens, it doesn't take away the validity of what happened. It doesn't mean that that you accepted it, or that you brought it on, or that it was right, or anything like that. Trauma affects everyone differently, and we need to allow people the freedom, to process and to heal from trauma in their own way.
And thank you for saying process and heal, because I can tell you it took me 15 years before I said it to anybody.
Ooh,
because I was we didn't have the information at the time, frankly. It was still kind of like, it was kind of even before Anita Hill, it was kind of like, well, it's your fault. I mean, kind of that mentality, even though I did not dress or do any of that kind of stuff at all. It was just a different situation. And I can tell you that what you said was just really valid. And thank you for sharing that. That's very important.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, to your point, when it comes to sexual trauma, and I'm speaking about sexual trauma because that's my experience, and I'm pretty sure this is related to any form of trauma, but usually when it comes to sexual trauma, it's about control. It's about the abuser invoking some type of control over their victim. So you could have had on a turtleneck with 3 coats on, sweatpants, 2 pairs of shoes. It doesn't even matter. How you look and how you dress, it doesn't matter, because what it's all about is about the control.
Yes, absolutely. And also, if it takes time, it takes time. And that's one thing that, because I can speak from experience, you're 8, okay, fine. I was 21. I know how to talk. I know how to, all that kind of stuff. It was out of my realm of understanding. It just was, I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to look at it. I didn't understand it. And I thought, well, maybe it was my fault. And then I learned more about what does it mean?
Mhm.
And how do you define it? And that was not till when I actually volunteered at a women's shelter, and that was very healing because that was, in the last 15 years. So it took a long time for me.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what age what age you are. We still go through those same thoughts. We still have those same thoughts. I thought too, even at 8 years old, I thought, blame myself, like, what did I do? And then as I got older, I would blame myself. Well, let me not dress this way because I didn't know. Right. So I did whatever I could, to avoid it, but it happened anyway. So it doesn't matter, 8, 21, 16. We all have the same thoughts when you experience something like that.
And thank you for sharing. And one of the things what really impressed me about you is that you are somebody who has really made your own impact. When you decided that you look into yourself, you see these things, how did you really come out of it though? Because there's so much shame. I mean, that sexual abuse is like this big cloud, and it's this cloud of shame, and to walk through that, it's just not, at least for me, it's just not like, okay, fine, I understand what to do, I get the drift, it's not, anymore I can understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's still, I don't know about you, but it takes a heck of a long time. How did you get into your own and own it and know that you deserved it?
Yeah. But God. I'm a God girl. I believe in God. So first and foremost, because I get that question a lot as well. How, Keisha? How? How do you have this strength? How do you have this confidence? And I just say, God, that's number one. Number two, the first time I told my story publicly, it was during a speaking engagement while I was in college. And I spoke. Jody, I was only supposed to speak for like 15 minutes, and I probably spoke for like 30, okay? Because I just needed to get it out. And after that speaking engagement, we were speaking in front of middle schoolers. And a young girl came up to me, and she told me that she thought she was pregnant by her mother's boyfriend. And so in that moment, that's when I realized that there was power in my story. I was like, if I never help not another child, I have to keep speaking up, because it was in that moment that I realized that it was bigger than me. Sharing my story and being open and not being afraid of the shame and letting go of the shame and being vulnerable, that's when I realized that there were other people out there hurting, and they need to hear it. And I'm not going to say, doing that, I became superwoman. I'm definitely not going to say that, because it was a struggle, but that's what I go back to. I go back to thinking about the people that I can possibly help if I just show up and just share my story. If I can just help somebody else, encourage them to get help, to get out of that situation, or encourage somebody to go and get therapy. It was me just thinking about the people that are tied to my story, the people that needs to hear what it is I have to say in order for them to operate in their purpose.
What are your favorite quotes? Do you have some that you could share with us?
Yeah. So
thank you.
Absolutely. One of my favorite quotes is by Lisa Nichols.
She's great.
Oh, yes. Don't you just love Lisa?
She is a dynamo. She is one of the icons of the life coach world in my mind.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. She's definitely a diamond in the personal development world. But I was listening to one of her keynotes, and she said something that was really profound, and it stuck with me. She said 80% of who you are is 159% of what somebody needs right now. 80% of who you are is 159% of what somebody needs right now. And I love that, because to me, that spoke, you don't have to be perfect. Just show up as you are. Who you are right now in this moment is enough, because who you are right now in this moment is somebody's answer. You are somebody's answer. So you don't have to necessarily go to school to get another degree. You know, you don't have to speak well. You don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to make a certain amount of money. You just need to show up, embrace who you are, accept who you are, embrace your purpose, and operate in purpose. Because who you are right now in this moment is exactly what someone else needs.
Beautiful. I never heard that. Thank you for sharing that. Is
You're
there
welcome.
any other by any chance? I like this one is enough, but I just didn't know. I mean, by any chance? And that is so amazing. I'm going to remember that one.
Yeah. You have to remember that one. My grandmother, it's not necessarily a quote, but it's something that I share all the time. And it was a lesson that I learned at a young age from my grandmother. My grandmother, will always tell me that can't is not a word. So when I was younger, she would tell me to do something and, me just want to be rebellious, don't want to do it. I would say, Grandma, I can't do it. And she would always say, can't is not a word. Now go do whatever it was that she told me to do. And so what that taught me over time, because as I got older, I would hear my grandmother in my head. As soon as I said, oh my, when something got tough, oh my God, I can't do this. I would hear my grandmother in my head saying, can't is not a word. And that's what gave me the courage to move forward anyway, because in my opinion, it's not so much of the question is not, I can or I can't, is should I or shouldn't I? Because you can do whatever it is you put your mind to it. The question is should you be doing that thing? Is what you're doing, the decision you're about to make, is it going to put you in alignment with your purpose, or is it going to take you out of alignment with purpose? If it's taking you out of alignment with purpose, then don't do it. Right? I think that we overuse the word can't, and it's literally taking us out of the race, before we can even get started. And I think that's so unfair, right? Because who was it? Was it Henry Ford that says, if you think you can or think you can't, you're right.
Right.
You're right. So whatever you say to yourself, your mind is going to try to make that thing true. So if you're constantly saying, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, then you know what? You're never going to try. You're never going to put forth action, and you're never going to know. And then you find yourself stuck and paralyzed. So that really helped me over the years. Just remember what my grandmother would say. Kate is not a word. It was something that truly helped me to just move forward afraid, to be honest with you, just to move forward afraid.
What a beautiful thing. Can't is not a word. I'll have to remember that one too. I mean, these are really great quotes, because it's so true. And sometimes those quotes are the things that can just center us in the middle of just the confusion. And what would you say to somebody who doesn't have a purpose? What they say, align with your purpose. Let's say somebody says, I don't know what my purpose is. What would you tell them?
I would tell them that you do know what it is. Purpose is not something that you find, right? Because I believe in God, I truly believe that He's not a God of confusion. So what does that mean? That means that I truly believe that He's not going to give you something and then hide it from you. We were all born with a purpose, right? And because we were all born with a purpose, that purpose has been trying to come through and come forward for however long that you've been on this earth. Meaning if you 30 years old, that means that your purpose has been trying to burst through for the last 30 years. So what you need to do is have self-awareness, right? This is where you need to go on your self-discovery, get back to the core of who you are, right? What are the things that you really love to do? What are the things that come naturally to you? It's literally like peeling back an onion, because everything that we have gone through, our life experiences, both the good and the bad, relationships, the positive and the negative, our upbringing, where we worked, how people talk to us, therapy or not going to therapy, all these things help to mold us into who we are. And when we have these different experiences, they tend to take us a little bit off of our path, right? So it's our job to do the self-discovery, to do the self-reflection, get with a self-awareness coach like me, right? To get back to the root of who you are, right? And see it from that perspective. I think people tend to say, I don't have a purpose, because there's this, falsehood that purpose is this grand thing, right? Like, I don't know, let's just use Beyonce for an example. Beyonce, people probably say Beyonce's purpose because she has this beautiful voice, right? So we have to have Beyonce level success. And it's like, no, No, your purpose can be like, Caesar Milan, walking dogs. That can be your purpose, right? We have to get away from thinking that purpose is this grand thing, because it may not be that for you. Does that mean that, because doing nails, right, or making a woman feel good in her own skin, does that mean that that's less than being able to sing beautifully like Beyonce on award shows? No, that doesn't mean you're less than. That just means that, the thing in this world that we need, you need to provide it. And what you need, the solution that you need to provide is different from Beyonce's. That's it. That's it. And we have to stop thinking that our purpose is this big magical thing, because that may not even be the case. Now, if it is the case for you, then great, perfect. But if it's not, don't think that you're not worthy. Right? And don't think that it's not purpose, because it's not this grand thing, if you will.
Yes, and it's just exactly who and what we are can be purpose enough, and to really pay attention to what we're doing. Everything we're doing. I mean, if you clean up your apartment, hey, that's cool. I mean, whatever it is that we do, and to do it with grace and to do it with focus. And I think that you said that well. And tell us about your business, please.
Yeah. So my business is all about self-awareness. Sharing my story is so funny because you brought up my story earlier, because you said that you heard me say I didn't want to be the person recognized as the person that was a sexual abuse survivor, right? So it's so crazy, because when it's purpose, there's nothing you can do to run from it. So even, like I said, I became a speaker in college. So through all corporate jobs and things like that, I always found myself sharing my story with women, just giving them encouragement. Even if someone will come to me and be like, Keisha, can you help me put together, a presentation, because I want to ask the boss for a raise, but I'm so scared, whatever. And so next thing you know, I'm giving them this pep talk by sharing my story, right? So what I realized is that, we lack self-awareness. Self-awareness was the thing that really helped me to really understand who I am and to really heal from, my sexual trauma. And so I wanted to help other women do the same thing, because I think sometimes we look for answers that's outside of ourselves, but all the answers is really within ourselves. We just need to get back to the core of who we are. So I do self-awareness coaching. I do that on a one-on-one basis. I have a 3-month self-awareness coaching program. I also do it through master life classes, where I have an online course that's a hybrid, meaning that you have online access to a course. And then I also do weekly group coaching sessions, and it's called Strategize Your Vision. So I literally help you put together an action plan so you can manifest the vision that you have for your life. Because knowing purpose and operating purpose is two completely different things, right? There are a lot of people out here who know what their purpose is. They just don't know what to do. They don't know how to make the first step. They don't know what that first step is. So my Master Life class, Strategize Your Vision, walks you through the steps on how to create a strategy, to manifest the vision that you have for your life. And I'm also an author. I have a book called 31 Days of Truth, Manifest Your Passion, Power, and Perseverance.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
it's beautiful.
Thank you. And it reads like a journal, because for 31 days, I literally talk about a common issue, a common struggle that we all have and have all experienced or could relate to. And I give you tips and tricks on how to turn that issue into a triumph, right? Once again, I give you actionable steps, because people, they're out here and they have these issues. People are looking for answers. It doesn't have to be the perfect answer, right? I could just give you some steps that will put you on the right path. That's going to, eventually get you to where you need to be, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. People just need a hint on what to do next and how to do it. So in my book, I give you tips and tricks, and I share a lot more of my journey too, because these tips and tricks that I give, these principles, are the things that have worked for me or may not have worked for me. And I'll talk about it in the book. Just because it doesn't work for me doesn't mean it's not going to work for you. And it doesn't mean that it's not good information that can be shared with someone else. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great. Well, I know we're going to have information about how they can contact you and get in touch with you, and we will have all that information in the show as well. Is there any parting comments you'd like to say? It's been just really great having you, and so uplifting. Very
Oh,
uplifting.
thank you.
Very
Thank you so
uplifting.
much. Yes, I just want to tell everybody who's listening to us. I just want you to know that you are enough and your truth is beautiful. That's it. Whatever you do, if anything, if everything else, you forget everything else that you said today. I want you to remember that you are enough and your truth is beautiful.
Wow. Well, that is quite a note to end on. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom today with us. We are truly fortunate. Thank you
And
again.